The COVID-19 pandemic has infected millions of people worldwide and brought the world economy to its knees. How can innovation help solve the problems? Welcome to the OurCrowd Pandemic Innovation Conference.
We're a startup in the field of diagnostics, medical diagnostics. We have an expert team in the field, and when SARS-CoV-2 broke out, we said, how can we use our personalized tagging opportunity, our tagging technology, to actually screen out the different population for people who are virus positive.
Inside this breathalyzer, there is a chip, electronic chip, that contains something like the 20,000 nano antennas. And once the antenna absorbs whatever coming from the mouth, after breathing it, we are scanning the chip inside the capsule in a terahertz spectrometer. And then we can see the signature, the exact signature of coronavirus infected people compared to healthy people. And this unique signature that we actually distinguish throughout the clinical trial that were escorted by the Israeli Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Care, and also by Sheba Hospital, actually showed us that we have a very, very unique signature for coronavirus carriers.
We have done studies, we have looked and studied it in our lab and in other labs externally that show that actually when you put sanitized liquid, the nitric oxide releasing solution, together with the virus for a very short time, with the SARS-CoV-2 virus, it kills it. Within 2 minutes, it gets complete kill of the virus. But it wasn't the priority. We were working on chronic sinusitis and diabetic foot ulcer, onychomycosis. And when this just started, everything was on hold. And then we decided that we quickly pivot and develop this treatment for COVID and do a quick clinical trial.
How do we actually use sanitize?
It's a simple nasal spray, and you can see just a simple nasal spray that you can spray in your nose together with a nasal lavage, a nasal rinse. It's very simple. Everyone can do it at home. You can do the nasal spray during the day when you're at work. Every time when you think you may get infected, you can use it, or early on the disease.
We're already the world's largest collaborative data community. There's more data sets on DATA.WORLD than any place else in the world. It's interesting, we live in this networked society, but yet data is the least networked thing. The most networked data in the entire world is advertising data, trying to sell us more toothpaste, I guess. But if you look at data like data on cancer or on climate change or on COVID-19, it's buried in silos. It's typically buried in different formats and not well documented. And so that really divides people in this networked age. By the way, over 2/3 of the Fortune 500 are using DATA.WORLD today. In the free part,
2/3 of the Fortune 500 are already using DATA.WORLD.
Each one of us has, for lack of a better term, a fingerprint of behavior with the devices, whether that's a desktop or a mobile device. The way we hold, how tilted this is, how much pressure we put when we click, how we type on a keyboard, how we move the mouse, how we scroll the page, etc. So all this together, hundreds on the web, thousands of different indication parameters create this fingerprint. And then we know that after we saw 3 sessions of you, at the 4th session, we can say, yes, this behaves like John, or no, this behaves like someone else.
So you actually have everybody fingerprinted based on their behavior.
Yes.
Bad guys are coming to get us. What's going on?
Yeah. So the whole COVID thing was basically heaven for fraudsters. Okay, because when you think about everything that changed. Okay, so first of all, the defenses of and we protect primarily financial institutions. The defenses of financial institutions are looking at where you're coming from, what device you're coming from. Does that transaction make sense in terms of the size of the transaction, what you're buying, etc. Now think about your last 3 months. You're accessing those systems from completely different devices, different locations. You're doing different things at different hours, okay? So...
Must be driving the banks crazy.
Yes. So those systems, all kinds of red flags are going on that says something is completely weird, and it is weird. I mean, we're living in a weird situation, okay? But the only thing that did not change is that it's still you, it's still your behavior. So you're coming from a different location, different device, but you're interacting with the devices the same way. So our defense now is the right defense for the time.
You're protecting tens of millions of people, accounts?
No, over 100 million accounts.
Over 100 million accounts.
We're looking at over 1 billion sessions a month.
In my mind, from crises like this, the biggest opportunities tend to be more medium term than immediate. Like it's fun to catch a trade, and all these millennials seem to be doing it in their Robinhood accounts. But for most investors, that's not a real strategy.
Diagnostic testing has been freed from the confines of labs and clinics and is beginning to take place in locations that were impossible to imagine: parking lots, open fields, and even drive-thrus.
Just a couple of months ago, during the OurCrowd Global Investor Summit, we predicted that anything that can be automated will be automated.
Telemedicine, remote connectivity between patients and physicians, has suddenly gone prime time.
2 weeks ago, Gil Shwed, Checkpoint CEO, warned of a second pandemic, what he called cyber pandemic. The world has seen a dramatic global increase in cybersecurity threats during the COVID-19 crisis. When countries are devoting all their resources to fighting a health crisis, such attacks becomes inevitable.
We went from providing a couple dozen telehealth visits a day before the pandemic to 5,500 every day in about less than 2 weeks. We also have to realize that the world is flat. We are one world, and what could affect patients on one side of the globe will eventually come and affect us all. So I think our investment and increased investment in public health is going to be key for us, not only for this pandemic, but other emerging infectious diseases. When we began this, the reason we moved to tele was the safety of both our patients and our healthcare providers, given the pandemic and the easy spread of the virus. I think moving forward, some of those changes will be permanent. I think the size of our waiting rooms will go down. I think our asking patients to wait in a common space will go away. I think you'll find a lot of just changes to ensure patient safety that will be long-term.
Outside of COVID-19, however, our customers are now by and large digital first and expect seamless, integrated and personal experiences. And we're certainly making massive improvements in our digital platforms. And we're working with a company that I know you've invested in, BioCatch, which is around biometrics detection, because we think fraud's going to be massive in this slightly more vulnerable times of people working from home, etc. Whilst that'll change.
Richard, $100 million is a lot of money by anyone's measure. Why do we need a pandemic innovation fund?
Well, we at OurCrowd, like every investor, have been watching the public markets very closely over the last few months. And you can't help but notice the massive bifurcation that's happening between the basket of companies that are addressing the COVID crisis and the very many that are not. And while there are ways to participate in this public play on the pandemic side, we haven't found a private play to do the same thing. And the hallmark of OurCrowd is to offer investors the chance to participate in private companies before they go public, where we believe most of the value is created, and do so in interesting structures. So we have built now over 20 funds on various different themes and sectors to take advantage of this private market value creation. And we think that we are uniquely well placed in this pandemic, given that so many of our companies have positioned themselves to tackle COVID-19 and to create an investment vehicle in which our investors could come in and participate and find this private market pandemic play.
It's extraordinarily important that we go forward from here, Matthew, and all of the listeners who are here with us today, with action. We can't just sit and watch this and stand by idly. It's not what we do at OurCrowd. We're not about passive investment. This is not like buying a public stock. We want you to get active with these companies. We want to hear from you in terms of your ideas. We want you to make connections for them. If you have a cousin who is a distributor and is looking for a cool medical product, introduce them to these companies. The beauty of what we do at OurCrowd is to mobilize this crowd of today 50,000 accredited investors, not just to invest dollars into these companies, but to help build them. And as we build them, these companies are going to have even more impact on the world.